The letter trembled in Elliot's hands, its edges worn from being read and reread. "I can't keep this secret anymore. I'm sorry, Dad." Noah's words, scrawled in hurried ink, felt like a blade twisting in Elliot's chest. He stood frozen in the living room of their quaint Vermont home, the autumn leaves outside whispering secrets of their own as they fell. Elliot had always known Noah was different, not just in the way he carried himself, with that quiet intensity, but in the way he guarded his heart. When Elliot married Clara 5 years ago, Noah was a sullen 14-year-old, still grieving his father's death. Elliot had tried to bridge that gap, to be the father Noah needed, but the boys' walls were impenetrable. Now, at 19, Noah was a stranger in their home, and this letter, this confession, threatened to unravel everything. "I trusted you," Elliot whispered to the empty room, his voice breaking. He'd found the letter tucked under Noah's bedroom door, left like a coward's apology. It wasn't just the words that stung, it was what they implied. Noah had been seeing someone behind Elliot's back, someone Elliot had explicitly warned him to stay away from. Marcus, the charming but reckless bartender from the local dive bar. Marcus was trouble, everyone in town knew it. His reputation for fleeting romances and bar fights preceded him. Elliot had forbidden Noah from getting involved, not out of prejudice, but out of fear. Noah was too young, too fragile, for a man like that. The front door creaked open, and Noah stepped inside, his backpack slung over one shoulder. His blue eyes widened when he saw Elliot holding the letter. "You weren't supposed to find that yet," Noah said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yet." Elliot's laugh was bitter. "You were just going to sneak out while your mom's away on her business trip? Leave me to deal with this alone." Noah's jaw tightened. "I didn't want to hurt you. I love him, Dad. Marcus gets me in a way you never will." The words hit harder than the letter. Elliot had spent years trying to understand Noah, to love him like his own son. He'd attended every awkward school play, cheered at soccer games, and sat through endless silences at the dinner table. And now, this betrayal, not just of trust, but of the family they'd built together. "You don't know what love is," Elliot said, his voice low and dangerous. "Marcus is using you, Noah. He's twice your age, and he's got a rap sheet longer than this street." Noah's face flushed with anger. "You don't get to decide who I love. You're not my real dad." The room fell silent, the weight of those words hanging between them. Elliot's chest tightened, but he refused to let the hurt show. "I'm the only dad you've got right now," he said quietly, "and I'm trying to protect you." Noah shook his head, tears brimming in his eyes. "You're trying to control me, just like you control everything else in this house." Before Elliot could respond, Noah stormed upstairs, the slam of his bedroom door echoing through the house. Elliot sank onto the couch, the letter still clutched in his hand. He didn't know how to fix this. Clara was halfway across the country, pitching her latest project in Seattle, and Elliot was alone with a stepson who felt more like a stranger with every passing day. The next morning, Elliot woke to the sound of the front door clicking shut. He bolted upright, his heart racing. Noah's backpack was gone, along with his phone and wallet. A quick check of the driveway confirmed his worst fear. Noah's beat-up Honda was missing. He'd run off, likely to Marcus. Elliot grabbed his keys and headed to the Rusty Anchor, the only bar in town where Marcus worked. The place was a dive, its neon sign flickering even in daylight. Inside, the air smelled of stale beer and regret. Marcus was behind the counter, his dark hair tied back, his smirk as infuriating as ever. "Where's Noah?" Elliot demanded, his voice cutting through the low hum of country music. Marcus leaned back, unfazed. "Haven't seen him." "Why? You lose your kid again." "Don't play games with me," Elliot growled. "He left a note. Said he's in love with you." Marcus's smirk faltered, just for a second, before he shrugged. "Kid's got a crush. What do you want me to do about it?" Elliot's fists clenched. "Stay away from him. He's 19, Marcus. He's got his whole life ahead of him, and you're going to drag him down with you." Marcus's eyes darkened. "You don't know me, man, and you sure as hell don't know what Noah needs." Elliot turned to leave, his blood boiling. He didn't have time for Marcus's games. He had to find Noah before he made a mistake he couldn't undo. Outside, the autumn air was crisp, the leaves crunching underfoot as Elliot drove through town, checking Noah's usual haunts: the coffee shop, the park, the old bookstore. No sign of him. Panic crept in, gnawing at Elliot's resolve. What if Noah was gone for good? What if he'd pushed him too far? By evening, Elliot was back home, exhausted and defeated. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at his phone, willing it to ring. That's when he heard the front door open. Noah stood there, his eyes red and puffy, his backpack slung over his shoulder. "I didn't go to Marcus," Noah said quietly. "I couldn't." Elliot's heart leapt, but he kept his voice steady. "Where were you?" Noah hesitated, then sat across from him. "I drove to the lake. Just needed to think." They sat in silence, the weight of the past 24 hours pressing down on them. Finally, Noah spoke. "I know you're trying to protect me, but I'm not a kid anymore. I need to figure this out on my own." Elliot nodded, his throat tight. "I just don't want you to get hurt." "I know," Noah whispered, "but you can't save me from everything." For the first time in years, Elliot saw the boy he'd met 5 years ago, not the angry teenager, but the scared kid who'd lost his dad and didn't know how to let anyone else in. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way forward. But the letter still burned in Elliot's mind, and he knew this was far from over. Noah's confession hung in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore but too fragile to grasp. Elliot wanted to reach out, to bridge the gap between them, but the letter's words kept him anchored to his anger. He needed answers, but more than that, he needed to understand why Noah felt so alone in a house full of love. The next morning, Clara called from Seattle, her voice bright and oblivious to the storm at home. "How's Noah?" she asked, the question innocent but piercing. Elliot hesitated, glancing at Noah's closed bedroom door. "He's figuring things out," he said, the half-truth bitter on his tongue. He couldn't bring himself to tell her about the letter, not yet. Clara had enough on her plate, and Elliot didn't want to burden her with their fractured family dynamic. After hanging up, Elliot knocked on Noah's door. "We need to talk," he said, his tone firm but not unkind. Noah opened the door, his expression guarded. "What's there to say? You already made up your mind about Marcus." "This isn't about Marcus," Elliot said, though it partially was. "It's about you sneaking around, lying to me, to your mom. We're a family, Noah. Families don't keep secrets like this." Noah's eyes flashed with defiance. "You don't get it. I'm not like you or Mom. I've always felt different. Marcus is the first person who's ever seen me for who I am." Elliot's chest tightened. He wanted to argue, to tell Noah that he and Clara saw him, loved him, but the words felt hollow. Had they really seen Noah, or had they been too caught up in their own lives to notice his struggles? "Tell me about him," Elliot said, surprising himself. "Not Marcus. You. What's going on in your head?" Noah blinked, caught off guard. He sat on the edge of his bed, his hands fidgeting. "I've always known I was gay," he said quietly, "even before Dad died. But I never told anyone. Not him, not Mom. I thought if I kept it hidden, it wouldn't be real." Elliot's heart ached. He remembered the first time he'd met Noah, a skinny kid with a guarded smile, mourning a father who'd never known the full truth about his son. "Why didn't you tell us?" Elliot asked. Noah shrugged, his voice barely audible. "I didn't want to disappoint you." The words hit Elliot like a punch. He'd spent years trying to be a good stepfather, but he'd missed this, missed Noah's pain, his fear. "You could never disappoint me," Elliot said, his voice thick with emotion. "But running off with someone like Marcus? That's not you being true to yourself. That's you running from something." Noah's eyes met his, searching for judgment, but finding none. "You don't know him," Noah said. "He's not what you think." "Then tell me," Elliot pressed. "Help me understand." Noah hesitated, then pulled out his phone, scrolling to a photo. It was him and Marcus at the lake, laughing, their shoulders touching. Marcus's usual smirk was gone, replaced by a softness Elliot hadn't expected. "He makes me feel free," Noah said. "Like I don't have to hide anymore." Elliot studied the photo, trying to see what Noah saw. Marcus was older, sure, but there was something genuine in his eyes, something that made Elliot pause. Maybe he'd been too quick to judge, but the fear still gnawed at him. Marcus's reputation wasn't just rumors. There were stories of broken hearts, bar fights, and a past he kept carefully hidden. I want you to be happy, Elliot said finally. But I need you to be safe. Promise me you'll take it slow, Noah? For your own sake. Noah nodded, but the tension in his shoulders didn't ease. I promise, he said, but Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that Noah was still holding something back. Over the next few days, Elliot kept a close eye on Noah. The boy seemed quieter, more introspective, but he didn't leave the house again. Elliot tried to give him space, but the letter's shadow loomed large. He couldn't stop thinking about Marcus, about what Noah saw in him that Elliot couldn't. One evening, while Noah was at a study group, Elliot drove to the Rusty Anchor again. He didn't know what he was looking for. Answers, maybe, or a reason to trust Marcus. The bar was busier tonight, filled with locals laughing over beers. Marcus was at his usual post, pouring drinks with an easy charm. You again, Marcus said, raising an eyebrow. What's it going to be this time? Another lecture? I want to know who you are, Elliot said, his voice steady. Noah thinks he loves you. I need to know you're not going to hurt him. Marcus leaned across the counter, his eyes narrowing. You think I'm some predator, don't you? Look, I get it. You're the protective dad. But Noah's not a kid anymore. He makes his own choices. That's what scares me, Elliot admitted. He's choosing you, and I don't know if you're worth it. Marcus's expression softened, just for a moment. I'm not perfect, man. I've made mistakes. But I care about Noah. More than you know. Elliot wanted to believe him, but trust was hard to come by. Prove it, he said. Show me you're not just playing him. Marcus nodded, his jaw tight. Give me a chance, and I will. When Elliot got home, Noah was waiting in the living room, his arms crossed. You went to see Marcus, didn't you? He asked, his voice sharp. Elliot didn't deny it. I needed to know he's not going to break your heart. Noah's anger softened, replaced by something vulnerable. He's not the problem, Dad. I am. I don't know how to do this. How to be me and still be part of this family. Elliot crossed the room and pulled Noah into a hug, the first real one they'd shared in years. You're always going to be part of this family, he said. No matter what. For a moment, Noah let himself lean into the embrace, but Elliot knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still secrets, still doubts, and Marcus was only part of the puzzle. The days that followed were a fragile truce. Noah stayed home, helping with chores and even joining Elliot for dinner, but there was a restlessness in him, a quiet storm brewing beneath the surface. Elliot tried to focus on the small victories, shared laughter over a bad TV movie, Noah's shy smile when Elliot complimented his cooking, but the letter's weight never left him. He kept it hidden in his desk drawer, a reminder of the trust they were rebuilding, one shaky step at a time. Clara's trip was extended by a week, leaving Elliot and Noah to navigate their new dynamic alone. Elliot wanted to believe Noah's promise to take things slow with Marcus, but doubt not at him. He couldn't shake the image of Noah and Marcus at the lake, their easy intimacy a stark contrast to the walls Noah kept up at home. One afternoon, while Noah was at the library, Elliot's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meet me at the Rusty Anchor. 7 p.m. We need to talk about Noah. Marcus. Elliot's stomach churned. He didn't trust Marcus, but ignoring the message wasn't an option. If Marcus had something to say, Elliot needed to hear it. The bar was quieter than usual, the evening crowd still hours away. Marcus was wiping down the counter, his usual swagger replaced by something more subdued. Thanks for coming, he said, gesturing to a stool. What's this about? Elliot asked, his voice clipped. Marcus set down the rag and met Elliot's gaze. Noah's been lying to you. Not about me, but about why he's been so distant. Elliot's heart sank. What do you mean? Marcus hesitated, then pulled out a folded piece of paper from his pocket. He gave me this a few weeks ago, told me not to show anyone, but I think you need to see it. Elliot unfolded the paper, his hands unsteady. It was another letter, this one addressed to Marcus. Noah's handwriting was neater, more deliberate, but the words were raw. I don't know how to tell them. I'm scared they'll hate me. Not just for being gay, but for everything I've done to push them away. Elliot's throat tightened. What's he talking about? What's he done? Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair. Noah's been carrying a lot of guilt. About his dad, about you and Clara. He thinks he's the reason his dad died. Elliot's breath caught. Noah's father, Tom, had died in a car accident 6 years ago, a drunk driver on a rainy night. Noah had been 13, asleep at home when it happened. That's not possible, Elliot said. It was an accident. I know, Marcus said. But Noah was supposed to be with him that night. Tom was picking him up from a friend's house, but Noah begged to stay longer. If he'd been in the car, he thinks he could have stopped it somehow. He's been punishing himself ever since. Elliot's mind reeled. He'd known Noah was grieving, but this was a wound he hadn't seen. Why didn't he tell me? He asked, his voice breaking. He's scared, Marcus said. Scared you'll think he's weak. Scared you'll love him less. Elliot's chest ached with the weight of it all. He'd spent years trying to be a father to Noah, but he'd missed the depth of his pain. And you? Elliot asked, his eyes narrowing. What's your role in all this? Marcus leaned back, his expression open. I'm not here to hurt him, Elliot. I know what people say about me, and yeah, I've made mistakes. But Noah, he's different. He makes me want to be better. Elliot studied Marcus, searching for a lie but finding only sincerity. For the first time, he saw the man behind the reputation, not a predator, but someone who cared about Noah, maybe even loved him. Go home, Marcus said. Talk to him. He needs you more than he needs me right now. Elliot nodded, the letter still clutched in his hand. He drove home in a daze, the autumn leaves blurring past his window. When he walked through the door, Noah was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. The normalcy of it felt surreal after Marcus's revelation. Noah, Elliot said, his voice steady but gentle. We need to talk about your dad. Noah froze, the knife still in his hand. What? I know you think it's your fault, Elliot said, stepping closer. It's not. You were a kid. You couldn't have changed what happened. Noah's face crumpled, and he set the knife down, his hands shaking. I should have been there, he whispered. If I'd gone with him, maybe. No, Elliot said firmly, placing a hand on Noah's shoulder. It was an accident. You didn't cause it. And your dad would have wanted you to live, not carry this guilt. Noah's tears fell freely now, and Elliot pulled him into a hug, holding him tightly as years of pain poured out. For the first time, Noah didn't pull away. They stood there, father and son, bound by grief and the tentative hope of healing. But even as they held each other, Elliot knew this was only the beginning. Noah's relationship with Marcus, his struggle to accept himself, and the family's fragile dynamic were far from resolved. And with Clara's return looming, the truth would have to come out, whether they were ready or not. The kitchen was quiet the next morning, the air heavy with the weight of last night's conversation. Noah sat at the table, staring at his coffee, while Elliot scrambled eggs, the sizzle of the pan a comforting distraction. They hadn't spoken much since Noah's breakdown, but the silence felt different now, not tense, but tender, like a bruise still healing. I'm sorry, Noah said suddenly, his voice soft. For the letter, for running off, for everything. Elliot turned off the stove and sat across from him. You don't have to apologize for feeling lost, Noah. But you do need to be honest with me. With your mom. Noah nodded, his eyes downcast. I want to tell her. About me, about Marcus. But I'm scared she won't understand. Elliot reached across the table, squeezing Noah's hand. She loves you. We both do. It's not going to be easy, but we'll get through it together. Noah managed a small smile, and for a moment, Elliot felt a flicker of hope. Maybe they could rebuild, not just as a family, but as something stronger. But that hope was tempered by the reality of Marcus. Elliot still wasn't sure he trusted the man, no matter how sincere he'd seemed at the bar. That afternoon, Noah asked to meet Marcus, and Elliot agreed, on one condition. They'd meet somewhere public, somewhere Elliot could keep an eye on things. They settled on the town square, where a small autumn festival was in full swing, booths selling cider, kids running through piles of leaves, and a local band playing softly in the background. Elliot watched from a distance as Noah and Marcus sat on a bench, their heads close together. Marcus's hand rested on Noah's knee, a gesture that was both intimate and protective. Noah's face lit up in a way Elliot hadn't seen in years, and it stirred something in him. Jealousy, maybe, or just the ache of knowing someone else was reaching Noah in a way he couldn't. After a while, Marcus caught Elliot's eye and nodded, a silent acknowledgement. Elliot nodded back, a grudging respect forming despite his reservations. Maybe Marcus wasn't the villain he'd thought. Maybe. When Noah returned home, he was quieter but lighter, like a weight had been lifted. He wants to meet you properly, Noah said. Like dinner or something. No pressure, just a chance to talk. Elliot raised an eyebrow. Dinner? With the guy who's got half the town talking. Noah laughed, a rare sound that warmed Elliot's heart. Come on, Dad. Give him a chance. Elliot agreed, though his stomach churned at the thought. They set a date for the following evening, a simple dinner at home. Elliot spent the day cleaning, cooking, anything to keep his mind off the looming meeting. He wanted to trust Noah's judgment, but Marcus's past still haunted him. When Marcus arrived, he was different, dressed in a clean button-down, his hair neatly tied back, no trace of the cocky bartender. He brought a bottle of wine, a small gesture that felt oddly formal. Thanks for having me, he said, his voice steady but nervous. Dinner was awkward at first, the conversation stilted. Noah tried to bridge the gap, talking about his classes, his plans for college. Marcus listened intently, his focus on Noah almost disarming. Elliot watched them, trying to see past his own biases. Marcus wasn't charming in the way Elliot had expected. No slick lines, no bravado. He was quiet, thoughtful, and when he spoke about Noah, there was a warmth in his voice that Elliot couldn't ignore. So, Elliot said, setting down his fork. What's your plan, Marcus? With Noah? With your life? Marcus met his gaze, unflinching. I don't have it all figured out. I've got a past, and I'm not proud of all of it. But Noah, he makes me want to do better. I'm working on getting my GED, maybe going to community college. I want to be someone he can rely on. Elliot nodded, processing. It wasn't a grand promise, but it was honest. For the first time, he saw Marcus not as a threat, but as a man trying to find his way, just like Noah. After dinner, Noah walked Marcus to the door, their hands brushing as they said goodbye. Elliot watched from the kitchen, a mix of emotions swirling in his chest. He wanted to protect Noah, but he was starting to realize that protection didn't mean control. It meant letting Noah make his own choices, and being there when he fell. Later that night, Noah sat with Elliot on the couch, a rare moment of closeness. Thanks for tonight, Noah said. I know it's weird for you. It's not weird, Elliot lied, then smiled. Okay, it's a little weird, but I'm trying. Noah laughed, leaning his head against Elliot's shoulder. That's all I need. As they sat there, Elliot felt the first real spark of hope. But Clara's return was only days away, and with it, the truth would come out. Noah's coming out, his relationship with Marcus, and the secrets they'd both kept would test their family in ways Elliot couldn't yet predict. Clara's return was like a storm cloud on the horizon, inevitable and charged with uncertainty. Elliot and Noah spent the next few days in a delicate balance, their conversations deeper but still cautious. Noah was more open, sharing bits of his life, his fears about college, his dreams of becoming a writer, but Marcus remained the unspoken tension between them. Elliot wanted to believe in Marcus's sincerity, but doubt lingered like a stubborn fog. The night before Clara's flight home, Noah sat Elliot down in the living room. I want to tell Mom everything, he said, his voice steady but his hands fidgeting. About me, about Marcus. But I need you there. I can't do it alone. Elliot's heart swelled with pride and fear. I'll be there, he promised. Always. Clara arrived the next afternoon, her suitcase trailing behind her as she stepped into the house, her smile bright but tired. Missed you both, she said, pulling Noah into a hug. She kissed Elliot, her warmth a reminder of the life they'd built together. But as they sat down for dinner, the air grew heavy with what was unsaid. Noah has something to tell you, Elliot said gently, his hand resting on Clara's. Noah took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the table. Mom, I'm gay, he said, the words tumbling out like they'd been trapped for years. And I'm seeing someone. His name's Marcus. Clara's fork paused midair, her expression unreadable. Elliot braced himself, ready to step in, but Clara set her fork down and reached for Noah's hand. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She asked, her voice soft but laced with hurt. Noah's eyes filled with tears. I was scared. I didn't want you to think less of me. Clara's face softened, and she pulled Noah into a hug. You're my son, she said fiercely. Nothing's ever gonna change that. Elliot watched, his throat tight. He'd expected resistance, maybe even anger, but Clara's love for Noah was unwavering. Still, when Noah mentioned Marcus, Clara's brow furrowed. "The bartender?" she asked, glancing at Elliot. "He's not what you think," Noah said quickly. "He's good to me. He's trying to be better." Clara looked to Elliot, searching for reassurance. "I've met him," Elliot said. "He's complicated, but he cares about Noah. I'm giving him a chance." Clara nodded, though her unease was clear. "I want to meet him," she said. "If he's part of your life, he's part of ours." The next day, Marcus came over for coffee, a far less formal meeting than the dinner. Clara was polite but guarded, her questions sharp but fair. Marcus answered with the same quiet honesty he'd shown Elliot, and by the end, Clara's tension had eased, if only slightly. "He's not what I expected," she admitted to Elliot later, when they were alone. "But I'm worried. Noah's so young, and Marcus, he's got a lot of baggage." "I know," Elliot said. "But Noah's choosing this. We have to trust him." Clara sighed, leaning against him. "When did our kid grow up?" Elliot chuckled, but the question lingered. Noah was changing, and so was their family. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, Elliot felt like they were facing it together. That night, Noah came to them with another bombshell. "Marcus wants me to move in with him," he said, his voice tentative. "Not now, but maybe after the semester." Elliot's heart sank, and Clara's eyes widened. "Move in?" she asked. "Noah, you're 19. You're still in college." "I know," Noah said, "but I want to be with him. I want to build something real." Elliot exchanged a glance with Clara, both of them grappling with the same fear, losing Noah. But they saw the determination in his eyes, the same fire that had driven him to confess his truth. "Let's talk about it," Elliot said. "All of us, Marcus included." The conversation that followed was long and emotional, filled with questions about Noah's future, Marcus's intentions, and what it meant for their family. Marcus was honest, admitting his past mistakes but outlining his plans, finishing his GED, applying for a better job, building a life with Noah. Clara listened, her skepticism softening as Marcus spoke about Noah with a tenderness that echoed her own love for her son. By the end of the night, they didn't have all the answers, but they had a plan. Noah would stay home for the semester, focus on his studies, and spend time with Marcus under their watchful eyes. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. As Elliot lay in bed that night, Clara curled against him. He felt a strange sense of peace. Noah's betrayal, the letter, the secrets, had forced them to confront truths they'd avoided for years. And in doing so, they were becoming a family, not just in name, but in heart. But the peace was fragile, and Elliot knew the real test was yet to come. The weeks that followed were a dance of trust and tension. Noah stuck to the plan, balancing college and time with Marcus while keeping Elliot and Clara in the loop. The house felt fuller, not just with Noah's presence, but with the honesty that now colored their conversations. Still, Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing, something he couldn't quite name. One chilly November evening, Noah came home late, his face pale and his hands shaking. "Marcus got into a fight," he said, his voice barely steady. "At the bar. Some guy was drunk, started saying stuff about us. Marcus, he lost it." Elliot's stomach dropped. "Is he okay? Are you?" Noah nodded, but his eyes were haunted. "He's got a black eye, maybe a broken rib. I took him to the ER, but he's home now. I didn't know what to do." Clara, who'd been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. "What did the guy say, Noah?" Noah's jaw tightened. "He called us names. Said we were disgusting. Marcus was trying to protect me." Elliot's anger flared, not at Noah, but at the world that made his son feel unsafe. "You did the right thing, getting him out of there," he said. "But Marcus needs to handle things better. Fighting's not the answer." "I know," Noah said, his voice small. "But he was defending me. Defending us." Clara pulled Noah into a hug, her eyes meeting Elliot's over his shoulder. They both knew this wasn't just about a bar fight. It was about Noah's place in a world that didn't always accept him, and Marcus's role in helping him navigate it. The next day, Elliot went to see Marcus. He found him at his small apartment, a bruise darkening his cheek. "You look like hell," Elliot said, trying to keep his tone light. Marcus managed a weak smile. Feel like it too. They sat on the couch, the silence heavy. Noah told me what happened, Elliot said. You can't keep doing this, Marcus. Getting into fights, letting your temper take over. Noah needs stability, not chaos. Marcus nodded, his eyes downcast. I know. I messed up. But when that guy started talking about Noah, I saw red. I couldn't let it slide. Elliot sighed, understanding more than he wanted to. I get it. I'd do anything to protect him, too. But you've got to be smarter. For his sake. Marcus looked up, his expression raw. I love him, Elliot. I know I'm not perfect, but I'm trying. I don't want to lose him. The words hit Elliot hard. He saw the truth in Marcus's eyes, the same fierce love he felt for Noah. Then prove it, Elliot said. Not with your fists, but with your choices. Marcus nodded, and for the first time, Elliot felt a real connection with him. They weren't so different, two men trying to protect the same person, each in their own flawed way. Over the next few weeks, Marcus kept his word. He stayed out of trouble, focused on his GED, and even started helping Noah with his college applications. Noah, in turn, seemed to find a new sense of balance, his confidence growing as he embraced his identity. Elliot and Clara watched, proud but cautious, knowing how fragile this newfound harmony was. One night, Noah invited Marcus over for a family game night, a small but significant step. They played Scrabble, laughing as Clara tried to sneak made-up words onto the board. Marcus fit in surprisingly well, his dry humor a match for Noah's quick wit. Elliot caught Clara's eye, and she gave him a small nod, a sign that she was starting to trust Marcus, too. But the peace was shattered a week later when Noah came home with a flyer for a local Pride event. I want to go, he said, his voice firm. With Marcus. And I want you both to come. Elliot hesitated. He supported Noah, but a public event felt like a step into uncharted territory. Clara, sensing his unease, squeezed his hand. We'll be there, she said, her voice steady. The Pride event was a riot of color and music. The town square transformed into a celebration of love and identity. Noah and Marcus walked hand in hand, their smiles brighter than the rainbow flags waving above them. Elliot and Clara followed, their presence a quiet but powerful show of support. As they watched Noah laugh, surrounded by people who accepted him for who he was, Elliot felt a weight lift. This was what Noah needed, not just their love, but a community that saw him, celebrated him. And maybe, just maybe, Marcus was part of that. But as the event wound down, a familiar face caught Elliot's eye, the man from the bar fight, his glare fixed on Noah and Marcus. Elliot's instincts kicked in, and he knew this wasn't over. The Pride event pulsed with life, but the man's glare cut through the joy like a blade. Elliot recognized him instantly, Jake, a local mechanic with a reputation for trouble. His presence wasn't a coincidence. Elliot stepped closer to Noah and Marcus, his body tense, ready to intervene. Stay close, he whispered to Clara, who nodded, her eyes scanning the crowd. Jake didn't approach, but his stare followed them as they moved through the festival. Noah seemed oblivious, his hand tight in Marcus's, but Marcus's jaw was set, his eyes flicking toward Jake. He's here, Marcus muttered, confirming Elliot's fears. Let's keep moving, Elliot said, guiding them toward a quieter part of the square. But Jake followed, his steps deliberate, his friends trailing behind him like a pack. When they reached a less crowded area, Jake finally spoke, his voice loud enough to draw attention. Didn't expect to see you here, Marcus. Or your little boyfriend. Noah froze, his face paling. Marcus stepped forward, his fists clenched, but Elliot put a hand on his shoulder. Don't, he said firmly. He's not worth it. Jake laughed, a cruel sound. What's wrong, Marcus? Scared to stand up for your kid now. The crowd around them grew quiet, eyes turning toward the confrontation. Noah's hand trembled in Marcus's, but he didn't back down. We're not doing anything wrong, Noah said, his voice shaking but clear. We're just here, like everyone else. Jake's smirk faded, replaced by something darker. You don't belong here. None of you do. Elliot's blood boiled, but before he could respond, Clara stepped forward, her voice calm but steel-edged. This is our town, too, and my son belongs wherever he chooses to be. The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement, others stepping closer to show support. Jake's friends hesitated, sensing the shift. Elliot saw his chance and turned to Noah. You okay? Noah nodded, his eyes bright with tears but his chin high. Yeah, I'm okay. Marcus squeezed Noah's hand, his own tension easing. Let's go, he said softly, and they started to walk away. But Jake wasn't done. He lunged forward, grabbing Marcus's arm. Before anyone could react, Marcus twisted free, his movements calm but firm. Walk away, Jake, he said, his voice low. This isn't your fight. Jake hesitated, his bravado faltering as the crowd closed in, their support for Noah and Marcus clear. Finally, he muttered something under his breath and backed off, his friends following. The tension drained from the air, and Noah let out a shaky breath. Thank you, he whispered, looking at Elliot and Clara. Elliot pulled him into a hug, his heart pounding. We've got your back. Always. The rest of the event passed without incident, but the encounter left its mark. That night, back at home, Noah sat with Elliot and Clara, his hands wrapped around a mug of tea. I didn't think it'd be like that, he admitted. I thought I was ready. You were, Clara said, her voice gentle. You stood up for yourself. For Marcus. That's what matters. Marcus, who'd been quiet since they got home, spoke up. I'm sorry I dragged you into this, he said to Noah. If I hadn't lost my temper at the bar. No, Noah cut in. You didn't drag me into anything. I chose this. I chose you. Elliot watched them, his heart swelling with a mix of pride and fear. Noah was growing into himself, but the world wasn't always kind. Still, seeing him stand tall today, surrounded by love and support, gave Elliot hope. The next few months were a slow rebuilding. Noah and Marcus grew closer, but they took it slow, respecting Elliot and Clara's boundaries. Marcus enrolled in community college, his focus on a future with Noah driving him to change. Elliot and Clara, in turn, worked to understand Noah's world, attending local LGBT events and meeting his friends. One evening, as winter settled over Vermont, Noah brought Marcus over for dinner. It was a quiet night, the kind of normalcy Elliot had once taken for granted. After dessert, Noah stood, his hands nervous but his voice steady. I know I messed up, he said, looking at Elliot and Clara. The letter, the secrets, I hurt you both. But you never gave up on me. And I want you to know I'm grateful. For you, for this family. Clara's eyes glistened, and Elliot reached for her hand. You're our son, he said simply. That's never going to change. Noah smiled, then turned to Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. There's something else, Noah said. I'm applying to transfer to a college closer to Marcus's school. We want to build a life together, but I'm not running away this time. I want you both to be part of it. Elliot's throat tightened, but he nodded. We're in, he said. All the way. As they hugged, the weight of the past year lifted, replaced by something stronger. Love, trust, and the promise of a family redefined. Noah's betrayal had broken them, but what happened next? The honesty, the courage, the love, had changed their family forever, for the better.